Yo, what is up, everybody? People love making Elestrals custom card. There's an entire card channel dedicated to custom cards in the Elestrals main Discord. I've done this in the past. I went through, skimmed through a bunch of ideas, pulled out some stuff I like, and we're going to go through and rate some custom card ideas from the Card Ideas channel. Now, I've done this once before, but this time I went through and every card I pulled out, I made a custom card for, fully with art, etc. I went all out for this, so if you could please give me a like and subscribe if you like the content, because this video took a lot of effort and a lot more effort than I expected to, way over my head because I'm not that great at Photoshop. So we're just going to jump into the custom card ideas. I apologize, I don't remember everybody's whose idea it was on top of my head, but their credit for whoever designed the card will be probably below me somewhere as we go. So let's jump into the first card. This is a card that I actually made, which kind of prompted me to say, what if I just did this for everybody's card? So I made the A-Drive card using his art, which he then quickly told me that he's the moon dark element, not earth, but oh well, I made you earth. It's the only frame I had access to. Yeah, so when you cast this A-Drive, you can enchant up to 3 earth to it, just like any other divine room. You can disenchant earth from this A-Drive in order to special cast an Elestral from outside the game. I was like, you know what, he's the creator of Elestrals, he has access to all the Elestrals, why not just let him put whatever he wants into play? This is completely broken, can never see actual print in this ability because this is way too strong. You just drop like Pantera every turn and all that jazz, but I think it's super fitting for what Dan is as the creator of the game. So that's enough of my card. I'm not going to rate it too much other than the fact that it is like never printable. I'm going to give it a 0-10 on printable, and I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10 on flavor, and that's what we're going with. Moving on to the actual community cards. Starting with Surfant, a 3/4 for 1 water. When this Surfant receives 1 or more water, you can turn 1 water from your underworld to your spirit deck. I like this card. I totally think that it could get a little bit of a boost in its return cost, or return value, because returning 1 basically makes this card free to cast, which is okay, but then enchanting it for 1 makes the enchant free, which isn't really doing anything. So I think you could probably push it to return 2 water, maybe push its stats down a little bit, or maybe make it like a 1/5 with this effect, but definitely a printable card. I definitely think it's a great card. I'm going to give it like a 7.5 out of 10. I think it could get its power pushed a little bit with how much it's returning. And I love just the card itself. I think water really needs a receive card. So yeah, I'll give it a solid like 7.5 out of 10. Moving on to the next card. This card didn't have a name, so I named it Snowdial and made it a Snow Crocodile because why not? 4/1 for 1 frost. When this Snowdial is casted, you can target an opponent's Elestral. That Elestral cannot attack until your next turn. Yes, like, I think that kind of effect is super relevant. The only downside mechanically is your opponent could just ascend out of that Elestral, kind of like how they can ascend out of a Krakid. But this is kind of a half Krakid, but with better stats. Definitely playable, definitely an actual possible card to be made. And I like the effects. I'll give it like an 8 out of 10. I think this is a really cool card. I think it's perfectly fair, fine, and doesn't need to get pushed in any other direction. You could potentially make it a 5/1, but I'll give it an 8 out of 10. I think it's cool. No pun intended. And I think it's fun. So, Snowdial, yeah, we'll give it an 8 out of 10, I think. I think it's totally printable and definitely a fun card. If not, at least a tempo card. It works. Moving on to Pubble, another one that I named because it had no name in the effect, and it's actually by the same person as the last card. I know that for a fact. I think it was Jai, right below me if I'm wrong. So, Pubble, a 1/1 for 1 water. You can expend 1 water to target an opponent's Elestral. At the end phase, destroy that Elestral. When I read this card, I first thought, okay, this is completely broken. Then I thought about it a little bit more. Because you're destroying them at the end phase, you can't attack through them. So this is kind of like a more versatile Vertaqua, but without the negate effect, and it costs more. Honestly, I thought this card was broken at first, but really thinking about it, I don't think it's honestly that good because you won't be able to ever attack over the thing you're trying to destroy. So it's like they have a neck of a play, you expend 1 to target, destroy it, but now even if you have other stuff to attack with, you can't get through that neck gruff, and you're just going to wait till your end phase to blow it up. You can also think about it like a ridiculously slow boom bat, but repeatable. So I think it's fair enough. I mean, maybe it's just a better boom bat in water, but I think it's fine. I honestly think it's weaker than it reads at first. And I tried to make it like a bubbly pufferfish, so I named it Pubble. Because there was no name for this card. But yeah, I think this card effect is totally fine. Maybe an issue arises with some other cards in the future, but honestly, just popping something at the end of your turn for 1 cost on a 1/1 that's just going to get answered the next turn is probably fair. I'll give it like a 6 out of 10. I don't know how to feel. I think it could be broken, but it's probably honestly just too slow for really doing anything. So like a 6 out of 10. Alright, the next card. I see you cross out Designator. Enjoyer. Anywho, Omen. And if you don't know what cross out Designator was, don't worry about it. Omen, a 3-cost counter rune, so pretty expensive. When an opponent activates an invoke or counter rune, send a card from your deck to the underworld that shares its name. Negate the effect of cards with the same name currently on the chain. I did reword it a little bit because I felt it was worded a little bit slightly off, where it like made sense but felt like it didn't technically function. Slight reword, but I like the effect. I don't think it should cost 3 though, maybe 2, because it's really expensive and still requires you to have the same card in your deck. Now we do have a lot of consistent staples like Ambrosia, Nectar of Gods, Poison Arrow that we see everywhere, but that still requires you to run it in your deck, and if you don't normally want to run those cards in your deck, you're going to have to run a bunch of 1-of, making your deck more inconsistent, but then if you have the 1-of and you draw it, you can't Omen it. So you could probably put this to a 2 cost and it would be fine. And then my other gripe is I don't want to see a ton of neutral counter and invoke runes because we see what Poison Tipped Arrow, Shield, Gorgon's Gaze are doing to the format. So maybe make it have an element. I believe they thought maybe make it the Sun and Moon looking elements instead of just neutral, which I would agree with. I think making it elemental would restrict its uses a little bit and make it a little bit less prominent if just we stick with the counter rune meta going forward. But I like the card otherwise. I'll give it a 7 out of 10 by design. I think it could change up a little bit, but overall, interesting idea, and you're copying cross a Designator kind of, sort of. Not really, but yeah, it's there. Moving on. Mudslide. This is another card I had to reword a little bit because they wanted it to be a 5-cost rune, and no card can cost more than 3 as per what A-Drive has said in the past. So Mudslide, a 1-cost, I think it's supposed to be an invoke rune. 1-cost invoke rune. Ignore the counter symbols. Choose to expend either 4 earth or 4 water. If you chose earth, destroy all defense position Elestrals. If you chose water, destroy a card for each defense position Elestral. So either a 5-cost board wipe with Tsunami, or a 5-cost draw, probably on average 2 cards, maybe 3 cards. Yeah, this is really bad. It's really clever. Like this design is really clever, but the card is really bad. Nobody would play this card, I don't think. Even with all the Tsunamis in the world, I don't think you play this card. If you're playing Earth and Water, you're probably playing defensive cards, so it's either draw cards for all your defense stuff or destroy your board. Like, I don't see the use of the card. I see the idea of the card correctly, but I don't see the use of it. I think it's too expensive for what it's trying to do. Like, 5 costs to do it, it's too much. So I'm going to give this card like a 2 out of 10 because I understand what the card's trying to be. It's just not good in this iteration. It could probably be like cheaper and maybe do a little, I don't know. It's not good in this form. I think it's 2 out of 10. Sorry. I'm sorry. I think there's more, Dan. I'm sorry. I don't think this is a good card. I don't think this card should ever be made like this. It's just doesn't do anything in a sense, or it's too expensive to do anything. The setup is not going to be consistent enough. I'm sorry. This is 2 out of 10. Next card. I named this card Humbolt because it was an insect in Thunder and there was no name for it. So Humbolt, Humbust Nexus, I don't know. 2/3 for 1 Thunder. When this Humbolt's destroyed, you can special cast an insect that costs 1 spirit from your hand or deck in defense position. So this is like a foamy for insects. So you can search something like Viserys out, Spinnymph out, Humbust out. For set 1, this card would be fine. Going into future sets, it would be a little scary to just be able to pop out a bunch of Viserys every turn with more than just Viserys. And it kind of limits what insects you could print down the line that aren't too strong with this card. But I do really like to see more Elestral designs that focus on the subtypes. Which I guess I could have added a subtype to this card, but I didn't. Whoops. But yeah, I think it's a solid card. I think, again, for set 1, this card's probably fine. I think it's good going in the future. A little scares me with what it could potentially tutor out in the future. But for now, it's basically a foamy. And I think as a Thunder foamy for insects is really cool. I'm going to give this card a 7 out of 10. I'll go 8 out of 10 on this card. I think it's really fun. I think it's interesting. I think the effect is kind of cool. And the effect makes you kind of have to think about insects in the future. But I do want to see way more effects that have to do with subtypes, so yeah, I'll say 8 out of 10. Moving on. The Grand Coliseum. A 2-cost stadium rune. Ignore how askew that counter rune is. I didn't feel like making a second card frame. You can enchant this Grand Coliseum with up to 3 spirits. Over enchanted Elestrals gain +1 attack and 1 defense for every additional spirit they are enchanted with beyond their cost. So the design of this card had to do with trying to make like a Nexus focused stadium, and I think getting the extra enchant on the stadium makes sense, kind of like how Divine Runes are great Nexus bank. So this is the Nexus bank stadium that likes to see Elestrals with extra spirits on them. I think that flavor is fantastic. Whether or not this is good, I don't know, because in theory your opponent could just play their 1-cost stadium and blows up. But in theory, you could also run this in a bunch of Nexus stacks, and you get a lot of benefit from having the bank out that you want to immediately start pulling things off of to pump things. So I think it's solid. I think the design of it's pretty interesting because it definitely promotes Nexusing off of, or potentially just putting the extra spirits on board to do other effects. But then it also opens up for Laurels and stuff. But I think this is pretty cool. I think I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Maybe 3 is too much. You could probably just get away with making it 2 or making it a 1-cost that enchants an additional 2 and have the same effect. I don't know if it needs to be a 2-cost stadium. So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I really like the idea, and I can definitely see how it's trying to be like a Nexus support stadium. Very cool idea. Very interesting payoff for it, and it kind of takes the basic stadium idea and warps it just a little bit to make it more interesting. So I like it. I'll give it a 7 out of 10. I think it could do a little bit of changes. Alright, Gladiator match. 2-cost stadium room. Players can only declare 1 attack per turn. Fine to me. Might be a little bit limiting on some of the aggressive decks, 5 attacks, stuff like that. Would definitely help a deck like Voltempest, where just not letting things attack anyway. Voltempest is your only attacker plus the Nexus burn on it. So I don't know how much play this would see, but it's definitely a cool effect. I mean, cutting off potentially 75% of the board from attacking is interesting. I don't think it would be seeing much play, but I do like the card. I'll give it like a 6.5 out of 10. It's definitely interesting. As of right now, unless you're playing some weird control deck that plans on burning directly, maybe in like a Krakatuga deck. But even then, if the Krakatuga can get attacked over, the Krakatuga is going to just get attacked over. Like, that's the biggest thing is... Or maybe if you're making... Actually, you put this in a deck where you're trying to go wide and then ascend everything into a Wasp Spire and burn your opponent out. So you put this in your deck with your Ignectar. So they can't attack more than 1 Ignectar. You go into the next turn and just blow things up with a Waspire. There's the idea for it. I'll give it a 7 out of 10. There's a use for it. That's not just pure degenerate stall the combo, I guess. Still, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Next up, Eye of the Storm. For 1 wind, 1 thunder, and 1 of anything, target and destroy a rune. If at least 2 thunder was used to cast this Eye of the Storm, target and destroy 1 other rune. If at least 2 wind was used to cast this, target another rune and return it to its owner's hand. I think this is a really cool effect. So first off, we have no hybrid runes at all. So hey, a hybrid rune, super interesting right off the bat. And it doesn't just stop with the, oh, it's a hybrid rune. It does stuff based on what you cast that X cost for. Whatever you use for that neutral rune, if it's an extra thunder, you get to destroy second rune, making it 3 cost, destroy 2 runes. If you use a wind, let's say you're out of thunder, you can bounce a rune, or maybe you want to protect something, so you want to bounce something to your hand before it gets blown up by your opponent's card. Really cool card. Like, there's so much design space in here that's just so interesting to look at. The text probably has to get cleaned up a little bit. I had to change the text already a little bit to make this fit on the card without going over the borders and such. But yeah, I really like this design. I think it's a really cool idea to make a hybrid rune that both works with like double of one element or double of another element and does something different based on how you pay for it. Really cool idea. Like a really, really cool idea. I give this a 9 out of 10. Only 9 out of 10 because it needs some text cleanup in the version that I wrote here, and also the original version that the creator wrote, I think, was too long to fit on a card. So 9 out of 10. Probably one of my favorite cards of this whole video right now. I really like it. I think it's a really cool idea. Alright, next up, Emberi, the 3/3 for 1 fire. You can chant up to 2 fire, whatever that means. Maybe like a divine rune? You can Nexus fire from this Emberi. If you do, special cast an Emberi from your hand or deck in defense position. So, this card cannot be printed as is. It makes no sense because you can enchant up to 2 fire. What does that mean? Assuming it means you can chant up to 2 fire to it, like a divine rune, this card is broken. Because you can cast it, give it an extra fire. Nexus off of it. Cast another one in defense position. Enchant it with fire. Nexus to the original Emberi and get another Emberi in defense position with another fire. This card would be crazy because it gets you up to like what, 8-9 spirits onto the board in 1 turn, and then let you Nexus a bunch of stuff around, play like a Volcanic Forge behind it, or ascend into like a Blazerist the next turn and just hit for 20. Like, this card's broken. Design wise, I think it's really cute and cool to just like cast itself from the hand or deck from a Nexus, but this card is completely busted. As much as I think there's a really cool idea here, I'm sorry, it's like a 1 out of, it's a 0 out of 10. It can't be printed. Doesn't work. Try again next time. I'm sorry, Washi. I'm pretty sure this is Washi's card. This card would be either extremely overpowered, either make no sense, or just be like straight gas. This is like Humbust on not Humbust, sorry. This is like Nectar on steroids, basically. Maybe as a 1/1 it would work. But maybe use the 1/1 and you couldn't and remove the enchant effect. That might work. Or maybe as a 3/3, remove that enchant effect. You can Nexus 1 from this Emberi if you do special cast the Emberi from hand or deck in defense position and suppress it. So you can't just chain the Emberis all together. Then it works. So as is, sorry, it's like a 0 out of 10. It just doesn't work, or it's going to be too strong. It needs a lot of work to get to a possibly printable state. Sorry, 0 out of 10. Don't kill me. Looks cool though. Alright, Constellation Slide. I know it's not the art that the person described in the card, but yeah, that's a complicated piece to make. So it's a 1 cost, invoke rune, Nexus up to 1 spirit from up to 2 targets. So you can Nexus 1 from 1 thing, Nexus from 1 thing from 1 thing. If you do, you can place 1 Celestial or rune from your underworld to the bottom of your deck for each spirit that was moved. So basically it lets you Nexus twice. I believe you'd have to do it at the same time, so you can't move something here to here, then here to here and back. If you can do that, that's, I think, a little bit too strong, because you can just trigger a receive effect off of one Elestral, and since it's the same card effect, you literally move it off and on in the same effect. So you could move one spirit off an Ash Rabbit, then back onto it, get your card advantage, return stuff to your deck from the Underworld. So I hope you can't do that. If it's not that, it's a perfectly fine card. I guess you can kind of say it's a counter to mill options. You can recover something like your Ambrosias and your Golden Apples into your deck if you're looking to do that with Fruit, but Fruit usually uses Panacin to recover them from the Underworld already. I don't really see a current use for this other than using it to Nexus twice with one card to move something here, then move something there. So it's not a good card, but it works. I think it's clever, but I'll give it like a 6 out of 10. I think it could be useful in a really niche scenario when Circle of the Sky isn't really that useful right now. Like, the Underworld recursion to your deck is interesting enough. Nexusing twice one spirit is interesting, so it's two interesting effects that don't really match or mesh together, and there's no home for it right now. Yeah, I'll give it a 6 out of 10. I think maybe in the future there'll be something more interesting for it. Alright, next up, Ouroboros. A 5/2 for 1 fire. You can attack your ally Elestrals. If you do, you can return up to 3 spirits or Nexus once. I don't know how I feel about this. Now, with the right setup, this is every turn recover 3 spirits with a very particular niche setup. And it's a 5/2, so it's a decent attacker regardless. I think this would also probably need to get rewarded to this Ouroboros can attack your ally Elestrals, because otherwise you could potentially just punch into anything on your board and gain the effect. So probably slightly word change, but I think it's a clever effect. I think it might be a little strong. I mean, you're giving up an attack with a 5 attack body to recover 3. So it's a repeatable Sluggle every turn. But I guess repeatable better than Sluggle every turn, but super conditional, needing 2 Elestrals in play and hoping that one of the Elestrals you're attacking is in defense position and not have less than 4 defense. So really hard card to parse. I think this card would not see play, but I definitely think it's something that's possible that you could probably make work in the rules fairly well enough. If we ever get combat tricks, it'd be hilarious if you attack into like a small Elestral and then like nuke its stats or something, or change its position, like you altar your opponent's own thing so that it gets forced into attack position, then you end up destroying your own Elestral. So really interesting card. A lot of interesting things can happen with it, but I don't think it's that good. So I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. No, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. I think it's kind of like mid, where it's like, it's probably never going to work, but it's such a clever idea that I like it. So it gets a 5. It gets basically 5 out of 5 for cleverness and a 0 out of 5 for playability. 5 out of 10. Alright, and that is the end of my little card review. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope some of you guys saw your own cards and ideas in this video. I think you guys make some really interesting stuff in there. And if you want these files, let me know. Just DM me on Discord. And again, this video took a lot of effort to make, so please, if you like the video, give it a like. If you like my content, subscribe. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next video. And if you want more of this type of video, let me know. I will spend time to make more of them. Other than that, I'll let you guys go, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.